This is the Rat Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you live from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, broadcasting via the auditory and visual mediums to my fellow delinquents across the globe. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is November the 25th, 2024. This is episode 476 of Workshop Radio. And if you don't notice, I've got my very good friend here, Mr. John Willis. How are you, brother?
I'm great, man.
Man, it's good to be back. That month flew by. Where did those 4 weeks go? I realized a few days ago, I'm like, shit, I got to set that live stream up. And I'm like, it's been a month already.
I had no idea until I got the message from you the other day. I had no idea at all. I had to even look to see if we were weeks ahead of time.
I know. That's what I thought too. I was like, there's no stinking way at all. And I've talked about it, but we have been so busy with the business expansion that every day that I can make it to Lloyd, which is about an hour away where the city is, I am just going crazy. So it's been awesome. So how's life been treating you, brother?
Good. Business is good. Family's good. Everyone's good. We're everything's really focused on the party right now. We had 6 weeks and here we are like a week. We have this week and one more week. People start getting here Sunday night, Monday. And then a bunch of people will be here by Wednesday, and then the party's not till Saturday. So just getting everything, hands on to everything.
So I don't have a clue what I'm in for, but we're flying into Atlanta on the 4th. We're coming down from the 4th to the 11th. But we've got a day travel and some messing around. So we'll be around probably by Friday, I'm guessing. But
nice.
What happens at an SOE Christmas party?
Well, this one's a little more organized than normally. Normally, we just everybody throws everything up in the air and whatever happens. But we have music, which has been in the back before. We have a big stage and a tent, which is up next to the podcast building, kind of. There's a big 30-foot dome in the middle, which is kind of a hangout area. I believe there's some fire stuff around there. We've got some fire performers. There's a bunch of fire features, like Burning Man type stuff. Curie and Glenn ran one of the big camps at Burning Man. So a lot of that stuff's coming in. And then some of their people from those events are also coming in to help run this. There's a 40-foot barbecue trailer. There's a big barbecue team coming in. There's 2 or 3 other food trucks that are here that are coming in for the event. We got a couple machine gun manufacturers coming in. So there'll be live demo. You'll be able to shoot machine guns. You pay for ammo. They'll have it by the mag. There's some night vision. There's some other gun shops and gun manufacturers coming in. A lot of vendors, just different vendors. We don't charge for any of this. There's no fee to come to the party. There's no fee to come in as a vendor. So we really, a lot of times it's just kind of last minute stuff when dudes hear, hey, we're going down to this thing, you should come. And then another vendor ends up, tagging along with them. So a lot of times we don't even know who's showing up until they're here. But it's pretty big. And then we got a VIP package also. I think it's $250 for the VIP package. You get way more than $250. You get more than $250 just in SOE stuff. But there's vendors. And then also the VIPs get first dibs on any of the branded merchandise coming in for the party, as well as any limited stuff. Like I'm building some leather hybrid stuff right now, and the VIP will get first bid on that. And then it'll go out to the other people if they don't, whatever's left from that. But we have a lot of merchandise and stuff. There's an RSVP at soeparty.com, and we just need you to tell us you're coming so we know how much stuff to have on hand.
I'm stoked. I can't wait. Becky, she was all about wanting to come down too. So the two of us, like I said, we're flying in. We couldn't get a direct flight into Nashville, so we're going into Atlanta, which is fine. We've been through Atlanta before. Yeah. And we're going to drive up and go out and see my good buddy Brian at the property, Delinquents Gully. We're pretty excited. Yep. I don't get any chance to really work there, but at least we can go and walk it. It always feels like home, even if it isn't,
Bring all those guys. Like anybody you want to bring them. Everybody's welcome. We even open it up to the town here a couple days ahead of time, right before we announce it out public, about 24 hours ahead of time, because we have Little White coming. We have Supreme Lyric Supreme coming in, a couple of other performers, and there'll be hours of, live music and stuff. So we put it out to the public about 24 hours ahead of time and just kind of let them know also.
Something somewhat related, but did I see that Big Daddy's is moving?
He is. Yeah,
true?
he's moving right up the road into a more traditional kind of restaurant, I guess. It used to be a gas station there. But yeah, he's moving just about a mile up the road.
A little closer to town?
Yeah, I would rather have him next to us. He's a great neighbor. So you never know what you're going to get coming in there. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be better for him where he's going.
Oh, that'd be good. I mean, if it's anything like part of Camden, there's a good chance that'll stay empty for a while anyway, I'm thinking, unless the owners of the building have a plan for it. But I'm thinking, yeah.
I heard truck stop, whatever that means. But it's a family called the Patels. Most of your Indians that come here from India take that last name. So who it really is, I don't know. But I mean, those guys all do really good business in town here. People are always like, we don't need another cigar shop, another vape shop, another liquor store. But if you guys stop buying it, they wouldn't have so many. And it's good business for them. Those dudes do well business-wise, for sure.
I mean, there's a reason that you drive around the countryside and you see bail bondsmen and payday loans and pawn shops all over the place.
And dialysis centers. Yeah, it's those are good idea fairies. Everybody wants a vote on how to spend other people's money, but they don't want to make their own money and invest it themselves. It's always we need a bowling alley, we need a water park, we need a skate park. Well, we had all that shit. You guys didn't use them. They closed it down and put something else in there.
That is the crux of small town living. It's not, you just take it for what it is. Everybody wants to say, well, you know what we really need? We need a water park, or again, a bowling alley or a movie theater. Would be nice. That's a modification of the must be nice mindset, Wouldn't it be nice to have this?
It really is, man. And Amanda and I, we drove 90 minutes to go someplace not here this weekend. We left, went to Cheesecake Factory for breakfast. We had sushi, hit a couple antique stores, hit a couple makeup places, because it's not here. That's why we live here, because that shit is not here. And when, rioting happens, riot season's coming. I mean, if you look at when they were smash and grab and doing all the riots, that's when Trump took office last time. You're about to be in the middle of riot season. We don't have none of that shit happen here. That's why we live here. We're in the middle of nowhere. I don't have codes. I don't have zoning. I have food running all around me alive, and we can process that in a hour period and turn it into meat if we have to.
It's funny that you talk about food, because that seems to be the common thread of the news the last couple of weeks. There's been story after story of weird shit going on. Let me pull this one up first. Let me see what you think. But so the U.S., they said they're growing less food in favor of commodities. So 60% of food and 38, so might as well call it 40% of veggies, are now imported into the U.S.
Yep. By the cartels, a lot of them.
Isn't that insane? Like
that's your big your cartel money is avocados right now, right? When they were going to do that light rail system, they ran all through California. And it's weird because they cut all these avocado orchards down because they cut water off to them in almond orchards. Yeah. But they did it where the rail was not even supposed to go. They cut water at all these places. That train never connected. There's not a solid piece of track. There's never been a train that's run down any of that track. But they killed hundreds of these generational farms that had been there for over 100 years, 200 years, some of them. And now it's gone. We don't produce avocados. We used to have oranges and avocados in California. Not so much anymore. The avocados. When's the last time you had an avocado that was even worth anything since COVID? Like I had avocado this weekend. And it's not something's wrong with it. And it's coming out of hot houses and stuff. It's coming out. How can you get an avocado in the middle of the winter coming across the Mexican border? Well, they're grown in hot houses, right? And they use gas to speed up the ripening of them and stuff. And that's the deal. Like who was it? Was it during Clinton when they did the go big or go home, or was that Bush? So your farmers couldn't just farm 100 acres. They had to farm thousands of acres and commodity crops, right? All of your commodity crops, as far as I know, those are all Roundup ready crops, right? So they spray a field with poison, Roundup, glyphosate, and then they plant a seed in there that is not affected by the glyphosate. And then prior to harvest, during the growing, they use those big crawler rigs with the giant arms and the skinny tires, and they spray all that corn and that soy and that wheat again to keep all the weeds out. And I asked my buddy, I'm like, why do we care if pigweed's out here in the middle of the corn? Pigweed is also pokeweed, which has some medicinal properties. They'll tell you that it's very poisonous, and it is if you use it wrong. But he said, because if you look at it where I have a pigweed growing in the corn, it takes so much water that I have a 10-foot round circle around this thing where no corn can grow because it sucks the water out. So they spray all this stuff over again. And then just prior to harvest, they spray it again with glyphosate because it's a salt-based product and it draws the moisture out. So when they take it to market, they can put it in their hoppers. That's why they all have these big hoppers right on these concrete pads, these big silos, because we're going to hold that and blow fans into it. And we're going to wait for the market to be where we need it to be to take it in and sell it at market. And that's what all these farmers, like, they have to grow. My buddy has, I think he does close to 2,000 acres right now in commodity crops. And then he does mama cows, and he'll be upwards of 500 mama cows at a time also. And that's the same thing. Like, these mama cows, you don't breed a bull to a cow really anymore. A truck comes in, a vet comes in, or a guy comes in, artificially inseminates all these things with straws of semen. And now there's several states, Colorado being one of them, where they're putting people in jail for artificially inseminating cows. Like, they'll tell you it's because they're not licensed to do it, but that's not a veterinary job, right? Veterinary diagnostics, insemination does not fall under that, but you do see people going to prison over it. Yanasa TV talks about it quite a bit. It's pretty crazy, the attack on food. This morning I saw, just scrolling Facebook, Instagram, first thing I opened, first post, New York Post or New York Times, and it said bird flu found in raw milk. That's the big attack, right? Because they want to legalize and let people use raw milk because it actually heals you, and it actually doesn't have a lot of poisons and shit in it. But there's a huge attack on raw milk. You started seeing that ramp up about a year ago.
I mean, there's so many areas to go with that, but up here in Alberta, the average farmer, I don't even want to know how many thousands of acres they would have here. I mean, it's just massive, but it's all designed in a kind of a corporate factory mindset. You go, I worked at a farm supply store for about a year, and you could only buy your seed from a specific supplier. You couldn't save that seed the next year. You had to go back and you had to buy it again. You could only spray it with the chemicals that they tell you could spray with. And then they'll go. And it was kind of interesting. The other day, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. So some of the farmers have moved to these, I don't know if you've seen them. They're big white, I don't know if they're called silage bags, but they're basically the same as a grain bin, but they sit out in the field. And they're really heavy plastic, so they can just store it right in a bag sitting in the field. And then they have this machine that rolls it out like a toothpaste tube, squeezes it all out and puts it into the back of a truck. And I don't know if they were trying to get ahead of the storm coming or if the price of grain was high, but they play that market, And the big thing is they send it to the seed separators. So we have these big kind of seed plants here that they'll go in and actually separate the seed. And that's the big reason they want to get all the foreign bodies out of there before they even start, so that they, then of course, if they can make it easier, they make more money on it. But most of the guys here, 5 crops, and they just rotate back and forth. And I mean, could you live off some of them? I'm sure, wheat, oats, sure. Those 2, I guess. And maybe a bit of corn, but most of it, yeah, well, you're right. But most of it,
you can't live off that corn. You could take dent corn and feed it to a human being and they would just deteriorate, right? There's no nutritional value that your body can absorb. You have to use something called nixtamalization in order to process it so that your body can actually look into it. It's very interesting. It's not a huge process, but most people couldn't do it at home with what's sitting at their house. But yeah, and you hear Monsanto, you don't hear it as much anymore because they changed the name. Monsanto is ConAgra. It's basically the same thing. And it's also owned, same holding companies owns some pharmaceutical companies. But that's the whole deal. Like if you go back maybe 5 years, you don't hear about it as much anymore, I think, because it's such commonplace now. People aren't as shocked by it. But they would go around and test farmers' crops 100 acres away, 10 miles away. And that pollination would come from this seed here and germinate over here. And because it tested for that patented seed biome that came across, they would destroy that man's entire crops.
Or charge him for it, which I've heard of too, which is insane.
Yeah. The same people that sell the seed also sell all the chemicals.
Right. It's this great big incestuous relationship, which whoever designed is a genius if all you want to do is factory farm and make billions of dollars off it. But it's a mess. Look over in Europe right now. If you want to see what's coming to the United States, look no further than Europe. We're going to be 10 years, 5 years behind them. But there's this whole push. It's really communism right now all through the UK and such, especially with farming. And you have another farmer protest that's I guess it's taking place right now. But they're going through and they're putting such a tax on these farms that when they are inherited, they have to sell off 50% of it. So you're not going to have any food over there in Europe. It's pretty fascinating. If you want to see kind of how all that shit went, look at a Wartime Farm. It was very interesting, that KPBS show. And it's basically a living museum. They take these old farms and they put historians on them, people who have not farmed, and they have to make a living for 1 year in that time period, as in World War II. And they said, okay, we're not going to grow cereal crops to feed to animals so that humans can eat animals. Instead, we're going to cut out the animals because they take too many calories, and human beings are going to eat the cereal crops. And that's basically the gist of it. And that's what you're seeing all this push with the elites, right? The crazy madmen, the 1% of 1%, they're still eating cows. But you and I, the useless eaters, the breathers, we just are going to eat cockroach milk or cricket protein or mealworm protein. It's in thousands of products right now on the shelf in Walmart. It just doesn't say mealworm protein or cricket protein. It has there's about 100 other terms for that. Well, I don't know if you saw the article, and we may have seen the same one, but it was basically the gist of it. And I think it was on one of the an Ayn Rand Instagram account that I follow there. And it was something to the extent of, it's high time that the farmers stop hoarding all the land. Yep. And I thought it was like, the farmers need to pay their fair share. We need to put their inheritance tax up so high that the families can't keep the land. And I'm thinking, are you serious? If that's not the definition of a looter, I have never seen it.
So who buys it, right? When the price is too high for the normal man, it's the big corporations. Like BlackRock came out, their stated goal was by 1930 to own 25% of residential housing within the United States. By 35, they wanted to own 65%. They are currently already surpassed that 25% goal, it is said. They own 25% of residential housing. You will live in the pod, you will eat the bugs, you will own nothing, you'll be happy.
Another reason I love living in the country. Like you said, I sure as shit don't mind traveling. I mean, live in the country, make your money, and then travel to other places, man. So I'm sure I picked up a couple Canadian stories this week because I thought you might enjoy them. I don't know if you saw this one or not. So northern Saskatchewan, and of course, the northern area, without being too impolite, is where a lot of the reservations are, right? Because of course, when that kind of worked out, we kind of sent them to the bad pieces of land. So they had 27 cases identified the other day. Are you ready for this? Scurvy, John. Scurvy. They haven't had scurvy since the 1700s, when sailors were on, literal sailing ships.
Yeah. All you need is vitamin C, right? Tomatoes will do it. Yep.
So
tomatoes, kiwi.
I don't know if I'm going to guess that they're living off a really heavy carb diet with almost no inputs of any, fresh fruit or vegetables whatsoever. But they're starting to think that there's probably an abundance of scurvy cases across all of northern Canada. That's scary as shit, man.
Is this mostly on the reservations?
So I only did a quick, it looked like about half of the cases came from the reservations so far, but they're expecting that the majority of them come from there.
So is the government going to step in and solve this problem by giving them some other disease, or is this them themselves saying this and then addressing it within the reservations? I'm curious.
Well, the latter is the better option every time, because whenever you see a reservation step up and take control of themselves, they do way better than when you leave it.
Oh, I agree 100%. But the conspiracy theorist in me says,
right,
here's some vitamin C that's also radioactive. I mean, because, you know, that's happened in the past.
I mean, if you look at how long so many of the Canadian reservations have struggled with clean water and how the government has tried to fix it over the years, it's never happened. So I mean, you look at the residential school system. Have you heard about that up here, where they were government ran, Catholic ran schools that took a lot of the Native children away from their parents, and some of them disappeared. Some of them, you know, anyway, it was bad.
Thousands of them disappeared. This was going on up until the early 2000s. They were finding grave sites. It's just the surface has just been uncovered.
And this has the government written all over it once again. So what do you do? And then now we're dealing with, I don't know if you heard about this, but our Canada Post is on strike up here. So I really don't care, other than, you know, my t-shirts from you normally come through Canada Post, so they're being held hostage somewhere for a little while. But other than that, so get this, for anybody out there who, you know, has a rudimentary understanding of business, John, if you lost $3 billion over the last 6 years, there's a good chance you wouldn't still be in business, right?
Well, I'd be in prison.
Right. Now, if your employees came to you and said, I know you've lost $6 billion $3 billion over the last 6 years, but what we want is a 24% pay increase over the next 4 years. What in the hell would you do?
Right. Yeah, we've got that going on with the Pentagon right now. With they have failed 7 audits, right? There's only been 7 audits. They failed every one of them, and there's billions and billions of dollars missing. Like, I don't know. Will we see some change? I don't know. I mean, there's people being put into cabinet right now, which are seemingly better than the other people, but they're still fucking swamp monsters. I
agree. How about Joel Salatin? Speaking of good people, hopefully, like, I don't know. I mean, I love Joel. I sat down and talked to him. I interviewed him. I think he's awesome. How cool is it that somebody that was, you know,
Absolutely. The only way that would get better is if they put Thomas Massey in charge of it. But Thomas Massey really irritated Trump, and Trump said, "You're the biggest grandstander," because he wouldn't sign on to something. Thomas Massey's got a very funny story about Trump calling him and, you know, just being irate with him. So will that happen? I don't know, but that's the best possible thing that could happen, for Thomas Massey to be in charge of all the, you know, the meat stuff and the Prime Act and everything. And actually, you know, he authored the Prime Act with Joel Salatin. So that's great. I mean, it definitely gives you hope.
So where does this, let's play, you know, let's look into our crystal ball. So 4 years from this January, I mean, I don't have a lot of hope in politics, period. You know, I haven't voted in a while, and wherever people land on things, I don't care. But you got to have at least a little inkling of hope this time around. Hey, I mean, I Trump's in his second term.
I think you got 4 years where it's going to be easier to make money. I think a lot of people who were prepping have already it's just sitting in a disarray, right? They've stopped watering their garden, for instance. And then you've got other people, Bob Lester, Gary Johnson on here, myself. My focus is, like, it is not time to rest right now. This is the time to make the easiest money for the next 4 years. And then if it goes back the way it was, you're a little bit further ahead. Your infrastructure is more in place, and you've made some money and made some investments. And if if things continue the way we think they're going to continue the next 4 years up to 8, then we're just that much further ahead, and there's no loss for it. But this is not a time to rest and take it easy. Like, okay, you know, right, our guys in office, is that really your guy? Like, it's not, man. And the whole thing, Bob said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep eating meat. I'm going to keep eating pig and cow. Absolutely, we are. All of us are. That's what we eat. And we have the ability to grow that, right? We're farther out. We don't have the amenities of the city. We drive hours to get there. The things that happened over the last 8 years in the cities that were very negative, that shit doesn't exist here. It doesn't exist where any of my friends live. We didn't see any of that. That doesn't mean it can't come here, but it means that there are people here that are not going to let it come here.
And it's harder. I mean, there's many reasons why it is. I mean, anytime you can set yourself up into a place where it's that much harder for that mindset to get out there, you're insulating yourself, automatically. And that's what I love about, the country living and being in a small town. I mean, for us, we're an hour and 15 from the nearest center, and we're 2.5 hours from what would be a major city, and we're not even really on one of the major thoroughfares, you know what I mean? So it really helps us. Very similar to you, John, because how far, you guys are, what would you be, 15 miles from the interstate, 20 miles from the or how far? I'm trying to.
We're 35 miles if you don't drive the speed. We're 35 minutes if you don't drive the speed limit.
Right. That's a long way. You think, and if shit ever went really, really sideways, that's a fuck ton way for somebody to have to walk to get out to start causing trouble.
Between me and the interstate exit are thousands of farmers with deer rifles.
Right.
And there's one main artery in, and then there's two more that are, 15, 20 miles the opposite direction. You could very easily control everything off that interstate. And I say I mean a group of people, be National Guard or locals or whatever it is. We're in a pretty good place. And even during a drought, we still have water. There's still rain here. And all of our friends are in similar situations, whether it be in Tennessee or other states as well.
So how do you think the deportation is going to go? Is it going to happen? And is it going to be a mess? Is it going to be smooth? Or is it not going to happen at all?
Well, it's always going to be a mess because the other side is going to, push that as though it's a mess, right? The people, the wine moms and the soccer moms, your rich, liberal white women who don't have jobs and their husbands made the money. Let's be real. That's who most of it is. If you have the time to be out there solving the world's problems, that's because you're not at fucking work. And
right.
Those are the people crying.
John.
They're the people crying the loudest, right? But they also lived in gated communities. They want to let all these people in, but they don't want them in their living room. So all you have to really do is arrest the ones committing crimes. They're identified. Are they legal? Are they not? Did you commit a crime? Exported.
Right.
That's how it's always worked. If you commit a crime, what would happen if you were visiting the United States and committed a felony, Tim? Like it's ridiculously insane for our friends to come across the Canadian border, but they've emptied the prisons and the asylums and just brought them to the border. Those people didn't walk here. They were flown in on aircraft to the United States on jumbo jets. They were brought in buses.
Dude, when I come to the border, the questions that, at that moment, and I understand, I lose all rights. So I have to, they have access to search my vehicles. They can ask me anything they want. I'm pretty sure if they want to, they can get a hold of my phone as well. And if I do anything out of pocket at all while I'm in the US, I'm done. Absolutely hooped. But for some reason, it doesn't always work that way on the other end, does it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, man.
I don't get it. I don't know. I'm paranoid. I even think, if I'm going to have a beer or an old fashioned while I'm in the States, the last thing I'd even think about doing would be hopping in the vehicle, and you should be paranoid. Unfortunately, you have to be paranoid nowadays with any law enforcement contact. We were talking about this on the live the other night. We got a friend he started being a long shot trucker, and he was talking about dash cameras. And I said, unfortunately, you need a forward facing dash cam. You need a rear facing dash cam. And then you need a camera that nobody knows is there to record any contact it has. We got Tennessee Highway Patrol right now that has arrested over 100 people for DUI. And he would not breathalyze them. And when they actually ran blood tests on them, not a one of them had any alcohol.
There are crazy people
everywhere.
It was somewhat local. Yes, it was in multiple locations, and some of it was in this county.
That's
we have
insane.
We got a female we have a female highway patrol officer. One of my guys got stopped. This was a couple of years ago. Got stopped on the way back to work from going and eating lunch about a mile up the road. Some people walked in and said, "Hey, they got your guy on the side of the road." We go walking out there, and there's 2 fish and wildlife guys there. And I'm like, "What's going on? Why are you here?" He said, "She hasn't even got out of the car yet." She said, because he's Hispanic, she did like an all officers call for assistance as though she's in distress. And because he was Mexican, had some tattoos, I said, "If you guys made contact with him?" They go, "Yeah, we've spoken to him. She's waiting for another officer." I go, "Can I have my guy?" And they're like, "Nope, she's going to write him up and haul him to jail. He's driving on a suspended license." We bailed him out 2 hours later. But she never even got out of the car. She's so scaredy cat over this shit. She has no business doing this job here. It's wild and it's not because she's a woman. There's dudes the same way. We have allowed anybody, we fluffed up all these different industries and these jobs with people that just do not belong there. Look how many officer involved shootings there are. Look at the cop that had a guy in handcuffs in the back of his car and fired 17 rounds into the car because an acorn hit the car. Like, we're in a state where things, and I'm not saying all cops are, I'm not saying none of that shit, man. I have tons of friends that are in law enforcement and their jobs are harder than it's ever been. But you also have people, I was sitting in a sushi restaurant probably a year ago, and there was a state trooper, there was some local cops and county over, and there were some sheriff deputies there. And the state trooper said the new training is that when you stop somebody, you ask them, "Hey, come step back to my car." That way you have control over them, and they usually don't lock their car. And that gives us access to search their car if we want access to their car. I drive around in my car. If you go and look at my truck, brand new. There's hardly anything in the truck, right? There's nothing. When I get stopped by cops, more as a joke than anything, I roll my windows all down and put my hands up and turn the lights on. They're like, "What are you doing?" I go, "I just don't want you to shoot me today."
Right.
And they kind of laugh, and I'm like, "Officer, do you have any weapons on you that I should know about? You have anything that you're not supposed to have?" I'm just asking you the questions you're about to ask me. And I mean, I'm a 52-year-old white dude in a brand new truck. When they run my registration and insurance, I've got 20 vehicles they know that shit. When they come up license registration, I oftentimes don't even know where my paperwork is, but they know it's registered because it's right on their dash when they pulled me over. They have a camera that reads the license plate and pulls up everything associated. They know whether you have wants and warrants. They know if you have prior felonies. They know if you're on probation. They know if you've got a CCW. They know all that shit. They're asking the conversation to see how you react.
I'd like to know. So we've switched here in Alberta now. We no longer have, I guess, registration stickers. You know how you had to, renew your plate every 2 or 3 or every 2 years, every year here. And you get a little sticker for the year, So that's all done electronically now. You still renew it, but you don't put a sticker on your plate. And I'm 100%, even though they haven't been open about it, I'm 100% sure that they switched to automatic cameras in their dashes that look at the plate, because not very long ago, our local county mountie, as I call him, he pulled me over as I was pulling into the grocery store. And he was a long way away from me when he turned his lights on. And he said, "Your plate's expired." And I said, "No, it's not. I just renewed it all." And we'd bought all new trucks, and the registration didn't get automatically renewed like I thought it did. So, I mean, it was totally on me. I was like 3 days past expiration date, and it was like 3 minutes past 5:00. So I couldn't even go in on a Friday and get them renewed for the weekend. He's like, "Well, I guess you're going to have to walk." I said, "Well, I'll do what I have to do." But I mean, there's no way that he knew that other than it automatically, it was so fast, right? And I'm sure they've switched to that.
I've been out of California over 20 years. When I was in California, right before we left, in a shopping mall, there's a police car driving around that has a bunch of cameras all over it. And what they're doing is they're reading all the license plates, and it automatically pings. You can ask a police officer. They will tell you. It makes an audible sound in the cruiser, pulls it up, and it shows you this is a stolen vehicle. This is without registration. The driver registered this vehicle, has a warrant. They can take their pick of who they're going to tow or who they're going to arrest.
So up here it hasn't gotten out of hand yet, but just the fact that they did it was bad enough. So we now, they can randomly breathalyze you up here. So they can have, they can just have random check stops where you have to blow now, and you cannot refuse. If you refuse, it's the same as a DUI. And everybody kicked up a stink. And of course, MAD, don't get me started on MAD. They started out good. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Do you guys have that down there? Yeah.
No, I don't know if we do anymore. It was huge. Yeah. You've also got Mothers Against Guns and shit too.
Right. And so, they started, I'm sure, with the best intentions in mind way back when they were worried, when people were getting behind the wheel on a regular basis after drinking a case of beer or whatever, but they just kept pushing it, kind of like the gun agenda here in Canada. And so now you have shit like that where you can be pulled over, well, not even pulled over, just go through a checkpoint and have to blow. And if you refuse, you're automatically considered a DUI. Like, that's dangerous shit, man.
Well, they're not scared of you anymore.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
During Prohibition, all the sheriffs knew where the stills were on the hills because they could see them burning at night. But they never enforced any of that because everybody knew where the sheriff lived also. It's out of hand, man.
I don't know if I ever told this story on here or not, but back when I was growing up, we had a county mountie in my hometown, and he'd lived there for years. He had a one of those pencil handlebar mustaches, and he smoked a pipe. He'd hang out at the bowling alley. And he was fair. He'd pull you over once, he'd give you a warning. The next time you knew you were getting a ticket, right? Finally, he retires one day, and they bring in this new hot and horny young guy. And he starts giving everybody tickets for everything. And one day he gets a 9mm shell in an anonymous envelope in the mail. In other words, smarten up, and he just lost his shit. And so the guy was in retirement. He was enjoying retirement. He come out one day and he said, listen, you got to understand this. You have to live here too. So it's not that you let things slide, but you have to be reasonable about it. That's just simple as that, right? It doesn't mean that people get away with everything. It just means that you don't have to be use a word there. A dick about it. You know what I mean?
You don't have to, it's harass and collect, right?
Right.
It's all about generating money. And when revenue gets tighter, when you see little tiny municipalities like New Johnsonville over here that has brand new cop cars, they're a very small city town, but their speed limit drops 10, 15 miles per hour because that's all their revenue right there. Do we not have real crime to actually handle, right? Do we not have real criminals doing real criminal shit? Why are you not over stopping people stealing shit out of the Walmart, right? Why are you harassing people during working hours traveling back and forth? Yeager said when he was a sheriff over in Big Sandy, he said, I didn't have to stop people for 5 or 10 miles over. He said, I could write tickets all night long for people 30 over or 20 over. He goes, I never had to stop a guy that was 5 or 10.
I've heard cops say it all the time. For the most part, if you drive with the traffic, they're never going to bother you. They're looking for the idiot that's weaving in and out because there's always enough. We have a major north-south highway that goes between Calgary and Edmonton, and it's very common to go 30 kilometers an hour over the speed limit there, 20 miles or more. And the entire traffic is doing it. But there's always going to be one asshole who's going to pull up on your rear end. He's going to honk, flash his lights, whatever it is, and just wail right by you. And that's the guy. I mean, if it has to be, I guess that's the guy I'm okay with getting pulled over,
I got a buddy who was working with Homeland Security, and every state has one of these units in it. They had a bunch of Suburbans. The state of Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky all had these things. And they had 6 of these Suburbans through the state for the unit he was attached to. And they had side scan x-ray machines. They could drive right up next to your car and know every piece of metal, everything that was in the car. If nipples were pierced, body parts were pierced, if you had a firearm or a knife, they knew all of that. It just drove right past and it recorded all that shit. They knew everything that was in those things.
That's scary as shit.
So I would assume that all the interdiction task force guys probably have something similar at this point to that also. Like when a cop stops you, they know what's there. They already know what your paperwork says before they've even got down to your car. So
an interesting habit that I've gotten into over the last while, and because in Alberta, conversations only require one single party consent for recording, So if I ever have to have a difficult conversation, or if I suspect that say a parent or somebody is going to be very belligerent, I turn my video record on, put it in my pocket, and just record the audio. And
I think
yeah.
in that business, you should record everything automatically anyways. There should be something up here when they walk into the office, this is being recorded.
That's not a bad idea, John. And I just haven't done it, probably out of laziness or complacency at this point, but because you can always get caught off guard, that's why I have a dash cam in my truck, because, the one time you don't think you need it is when you do.
Like when I'm talking to employees, if I'm ever talking to a female employee, I never speak to a female employee without another one or even two present. And lately, I've had Cody there present also, just so he can see how I handle these conversations in hiring new people, in letting people go, having difficult conversations. So I've got Cody there. I have one of my top ladies that runs the floor, and then whoever else is involved. But I'm never going to have a conversation alone, so that it can never, hey, he said this or he did that. It can't happen. You just hear too many horror stories about that. And discussing business. I don't discuss business on the phone. I discuss business through messaging, text, or email. So I have a clear history of that. When people want to do something, when they ask for, especially if they're asking for something special or business wise, I'm not going to remember in 2 minutes what I promised you a lot of times. And I'm going to be, as soon as I end this conversation, I've got two other people waiting to put some other fire out. So if I have it in writing, I can literally screenshot that or include them in the email so that everybody knows what's going on.
Back about 3 years ago, I made everything that I do for property management goes through text message or email now.
It has
that way I have one. So I just had a Yahoo. It happened just after we had our live last month, John. This guy, I knew before it was a place that's kind of hard to rent. And I'm like, all right, I'll rent to him, and I did him a favor. I'm like, okay, the guy that moved out made it a mess. I said, if you want to clean the place up, because he was in a hurry, of course, they're always pushing to get you in there, right? I said, if you want to move in, you can clean it up and I will give you 1 month free rent, but you still have to pay your damage deposit before you even start. I'm okay with that. Yep, no problem. He says, I'm the type of guy, I have all this in text. I'm the type of guy who's going to live there for 3 years or years and years and years. So 4 days before the dude unceremoniously moves out, he wasn't even in there for 2 months. He said, hey, could I paint all the walls black? I want to live here for years. I'm like, no, you can't paint them black. But if we want to talk about it, I will buy you paint for painting it. He goes, yep, no problem. He goes, and also, do you happen to have any bigger places in town? I'm looking for something to stay even longer term. He goes, I'm here forever. And then, so on the 4th of November, I get a message from him. He's like, yeah, I moved out. The place is clean. I won't be back. He's like, can I get my deposit back?
No.
And I'm like, dude, you didn't even give me 1 minute's notice. Your lease says you have to give 30 days notice. And the guy put me on blast, threatened to run me through the ringer on YouTube, called
Always.
me every racial epithet in the world. I mean, the nastiest stuff that if I ever said to somebody else I would be put in jail, right. But he's allowed to. So I have it all on text, every bit of it.
I got to step out for just a second.
You go ahead. Yes. So if anybody out there, I don't know how everybody's doing, but if you guys have some questions for us, it'll be great. I don't know. I guess I can fill you guys in on what we dealt with over the last 2 days here. But of course, if those of you who don't exactly know who I am, I'm Toolman Tim. We live up in Alberta, and we just got between 10 and 12 inches of snow yesterday, minus 15 Celsius, which would be, around 0 Fahrenheit. I'm guessing. I don't know. So if anybody else has seen any of that white stuff yet, I'd love to hear from you. But it was a mess. But it was a dry snow. It came late this year, so we didn't have any power outages. The leaves were off the trees. And let's see. Let's go back through some of the comments here. And Jezemy, I don't know if I got that right or not, said Denver has made national news with tons of cars with no plates at all. Now, is that just because people don't give a shit and they want to drive, or is that a new rule that they passed? I haven't heard either way. And let's see here. We got pro tip. If you have dash cams, never volunteer that you have camera footage. If it asks for it, only surrender it through your lawyer. Anytime you're dealing with law enforcement, folks, always work through a lawyer. Don't ever agree to anything because it can be turned around. I have 6 or 7 cameras around my property here, and that's purely for my protection and my own protection, because I'm not going to offer that to anybody whatsoever. How about you, John? Do you have cameras and stuff on property there?
3 separate redundant systems.
Really? Any tips about that? Like anything that you've learned from it over the years, or just have them and make sure they work?
Upgrade them. Most of your camera systems are actually pretty shitty. You get what you pay for with camera systems. You can buy, a Samsung system or the Night Owl system or any of those for, $1,200, and it comes with 10 cameras, and they all see in the dark now. They're all weatherproof. Then again, when you buy real camera systems, you'll have a $2,000 camera also. It's submissible versus non-submissible in court. I have a camera system where we definitely know when somebody's out there, but you'd be hard pressed to identify who some of them are. And then I have another camera system that overlaps the same areas that's actually very impressive. Every couple of years they change. I don't have any camera systems that are wireless cameras. All my cameras are wired and they're up high. And then I've got battery backup. Also, I have a bank vault battery pack that backs up the entire system if it goes down, and that camera system will run for, weeks. And then we have a hard drive that records into safes. So the hard drives are in a safe in a locked room in a locked area. And then they also upload to the cloud. So we have a backup if somebody came in and was to get a hold of that, or if something happened to that set of, I say hard drives, they're little server units. But if something happened there, like a fire or whatever, after something, a robbery or something, we still have it uploaded. So redundant systems, you get what you pay for. And then you're going to be hard pressed to go beyond 100. You can get 100 feet on those cables. When you get to 150, 200, you lose and start having problems with them. Power and voltage issues. We've used voltage boosters, which help somewhat, but you're better off having separate systems on different areas, depending how big of an area you're trying to keep cameras on.
Makes sense. So on my home here, I've got 5 hardwired. I've got the DVR. I can actually, so while we're sitting here, I can actually see 4 of the cameras on the screen next to me.
Yep.
That way, because my studio for now is down in the basement. And so if somebody comes to any one of the doors or pulls into the driveway, usually my dogs will alert me first, but that's what, gives me the quick to look over there, which I love. But I picked up one a while back to test, and companies have sent me them because the video blew up and I got a whole bunch now. But these solar Wi-Fi cameras, so they store locally on an SD card. Now, I wouldn't want to, 2 things. If it's all you can afford, then start with that. But it's also a really good form of redundancy. But at the daycare, the one over just here in town, it's a very old building, which would be really hard to run any wiring on whatsoever. So I picked one up there. We now have 2. They've been running for 2 full years. They have a built-in battery with a solar panel that's maybe 5x7. I've never once had to give them any supplemental power at all. They hook up to the Wi-Fi. Go ahead.
Okay, so they hook up to Wi-Fi, so you can watch them on your phone and whatever.
I can, but they also store locally to an SD card as well. So if something happens, say it dies, say you've got, a bad blackout, I don't know, whatever, or, snow gets on it and I don't catch it and it dies after, everything's still stored there until the power goes out on it.
Cool.
But I've never once had to go over and be like, hey, I need to bump this up with a USB power bank. It has, and I mean, what I deal with, very short days in the winter, lots of cold, not a lot of sun, and we've never once had to go and replenish the battery. So they've been really good for what they are.
There's a lot of good game cameras out there. They're all game cameras, but people are using them for, farms and monitoring livestock and dogs and stuff. And you just have a little, cell service on that thing, and it'll send video or text message, or you can even turn it on and monitor it right from your phone. And I think the fee for some of those, and I think you can put up to 5-6 cameras on some of those services. And I think it's like $15-$20 a month. And then if you pay it, for the year, but those seem to work really well too. There's a company that's in my head, Night Owl, just because I see it targeted on Facebook and such. But there's a ton of stuff like that. If you just go to any of your sporting goods stores, they all have cellular service game cameras, and those things all run. You can set the sensitivity. They're full color. Some of them have sound with them, and they all do video.
Now, I tried one of those down at Delinquent Gully. So for those who don't know, we have a 15-acre parcel of land, off-grid property, about 45 minutes south of John and Amanda. And whenever I get a chance, we get down there. But I'd love to be able to just keep an eye on it just for the fun of it, to be able to see, you know. But the cell service is so shitty out there that the 4G cameras aren't working. So Brian and Corey, who are kind of our caretakers, we've got an agreement with them. They're going to be moving onto the property in one of the back parcels of it. Once they get there, we're going to be running Starlink out there on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Then we'll be able to have cameras, communication gear, all of that. And I want to tell you, man, if anybody out there hasn't fucked with Starlink yet, that is the cat's ass. Like we've been talking for a while about moving out to an acreage, and you know, the chances of that happening are getting better by the day. And we're going to go strictly to Starlink out there. None of that bullshit, you know, the little satellites with the little radio towers and things. We had that when we first moved out here, and it was horrible. But Starlink is just so damn reliable. Are you on Starlink right now, John?
Yeah, right now I am.
Yeah. And back a few years ago, it used to skip and a little bit, but it's to the point now where it is just so little, so very little problems with it at all. And I see Sonny. I just wanted to show him. Is that Sonny Pazakis, guys? If you don't know him, check him out. What great shit he is. But
he'll be here December 7th. He'll be here. His birthday, I believe, is December 7th. Even we're on the Starlink. We have the mobile, the original mobile unit, because we couldn't get the mount unit. It took like a couple of weeks to get it, so we bought the mobile service and then just mounted it over here. And when it rains heavy or gets a storm, we lose. I still have real cable service coming in here. So I've got 3 networks of service coming in. So we're seamless, but we do lose quality. I don't know that I could do a live feed when it's really storming off Starlink. Now they got the new one. Guys, we're taking those Starlink mobiles, and there's companies that were putting them and ruggedizing them for, big off-road races and adventure stuff. And now Starlink came out with their own little mobile mini deal.
I've got my eye on that. And when I start doing a bunch more road trips, I'm going to get something permanently mounted to the back of the truck, because they're just, Gary Johnson says Starlink is tits. It really is. It's a game changer for all of us. And I love it.
Yeah.
Sonny says, oh, sorry, we got a Starlink about a year ago. Well, nothing is perfect. It's better than anything else we can get out here in the woods.
Certainly. Look at Spear Coast. Jack used to have to go into Hot Springs, Arkansas to his office to upload his shows, right? Had he had Starlink out at that cabin area at his house out there, he wouldn't have had to have traveled or even maintained an office for that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. There's a question here I wanted to get to. I think this is Jessamy or Jessamy. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but said, "Hey, Tim, how's the Trump election affecting Canada? Denver, Colorado 170 was hit with snow last night and stopped traffic. Pikes Peak has a new nice blanket." People joke that we're the apartment above a meth house sometimes, and I don't necessarily look at it that way, but we're neighbors, right? And so whatever happens down there affects the hell out of us, so if mass deportations start, that'll be an issue. Although it's really funny up here, and for those who don't know, the liberal government is in power right now, and they would be very comparable to the Democrats down in the States, but they've all of a sudden realized they're not going to get reelected. And so they've taken a hardline stance on immigration themselves. After being very liberal on immigration for the past decade, all of a sudden they have come in with some measures that if the conservatives did them, they would have been slapped in the media. And there's so many people who are probably going to end up having to leave the country. So that part, the tariffs are going to be interesting when they happen. Honestly, overall, when Trump was in office, it was good for us. And we're heading toward a conservative government next October. So once that's in power, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of working together there. It's always a good thing when Trump's in office for Canada.
I saw something. Trudeau used to be a school teacher, and there were some investigations of improper relationships with students. I believe the student was 14 years old. I believe it was. I thought that there was a conviction or something. It kind of went away after a while, but nobody really brings that up. But I did see that mentioned the other day.
Well, I don't know anything about that, but I can tell you that there is proof for a dude who is very much, as woke as they come. There's many pictures, and I'm sure most of you have seen him in blackface. He loved blackface back in the day. So that has haunted him for years.
Well, Castro's his dad. I mean, there's a ton of shit out there. Photos of his mom with Castro.
And there's just enough of a resemblance that it could be true for sure.
Yeah.
Lone Canadian says, when the U.S. is prosperous, Canada is prosperous. Yes.
I think when the United States is prosperous, everybody who's friendly with the United States is prosperous.
Ain't that the truth? Did you see, talking about technology, did you see that story? I don't know when it was. In the last couple of weeks, it was on solar inverters. And I'm going to talk about it on my show this week too. But I don't know if the company was spoofing somebody else's technology or if they just didn't have the rights to have it in the US and a couple other countries. So what ended up happening is their Internet of Things connected devices. And so the company, and it's SolarArc and DEYE inverter, they're having a dispute. And so whoever sends out the firmware updates sent out an update that bricked all of these inverters. So basically they said, guess what? You're not allowed to use them in this country. We see that you're using it in the United States. So here's a nice brick now. We're going to send out a firmware update that makes that piece of technology that you purchased and owned no longer available to use. Isn't that crazy?
Can you not open software those things? If somebody could probably do it. It's just like the DJI stuff. You can upload a different firmware onto that DJI drones that doesn't have all those parameters. I don't know how to do it, but I know there's dudes that do.
The biggest problem was that, of course, nobody knew it was coming. So it was just sent out and updated. And 95% of the people who had them are going to have no clue what's wrong with them or why. And basically it came with a little message. You can't use this in this country. So it's now no longer allowed to be used.
So you need like a VPN or something. I mean, you get the same thing supposedly. I've never had Netflix, right? I don't have any video services like that, but they say with a VPN, you can watch shows that you're not allowed to watch in your country by using a VPN.
Absolutely. And it's another way to hide your tracks too, or at least make it a little bit more difficult to track you down if that's the case.
I think it makes it more difficult for the layperson to track you down. Sure. I think that, the government still has access to all that shit.
There's any way to hide your tracks to the people that if people with enough money and enough power want to find you, you're not hiding from it. So, you can hide yourself from a few, the ne'er-do-wells, like, the Russian hacker, you might be able to hide yourself from him just because you're making it difficult for him, but you're not hiding from the CIA or any one of those alphabet agencies. You're fooling yourself if you think you are.
I think that you should maneuver even local government stuff. I mean, we just had those big hearings over Wildlife Authority placing game cameras on people's private property. And they actually got smacked down a bit over it in court. Court actually ruled on the homeowners after years and years and tons of money spent to take this to court. But I think that even on your own private property where nobody can see you, I think you should maneuver as though you are being watched. So if you're doing something questionable and you think nobody can see it, man, you should really second guess that. Drones sitting up, even the city using drones for property surveys to assess your property tax values. Law enforcement drones sit up high and can see tons of stuff. We've got weather balloons that sit up over every major city every day and gather and, snatch data. But if you think you're safe, you should just really question that.
I had a really interesting conversation with a guy at an event last year, and it was actually on his property. And it was near a fishing pond, and he wanted to build a cabin. Basically, it would be a living quarters. So he'll have friends come over. They might have a few too many to drink, and he wanted to have kind of like an Airbnb cabin for them to stay in so that they didn't have to drive. The problem is that he didn't want to have to pay the taxes or get it inspected or anything like that. And I totally get that. So his idea, because I didn't know this, but in his area, the municipal government uses drones to go and look for improvements on your property.
Yep.
So he was going to just build a lean-to that looks just like something you'd stand under when you're fishing. And then underneath of that, he's going to build it. So that's something, man, a few years ago, I would have called people a conspiracy theorist to worry about that. And now I already have some plans for some things that I want to do that I'll talk about some more in a couple of months that are going to require covers like that as well, simply because I don't want people to know my business.
Yeah, you have to do it underground, or you have to put up, like we have dudes that'll have you see it here quite a bit, like you'll have a mobile home or a RV and the roof will go bad. Rather than replacing the roof, they just put a lean-to over it. You just have to put a lean-to and some way to distract the vision of the drone. I mean, look at what's happening in Ukraine and stuff right now. And drones here aren't, targeting you like that, but they are using drones to come in. The best thing we ever did was put up fences. You cannot see inside our property from outside of the property unless you have a drone. And they do have drones. They assess, did he put gravel down? Is there a new building? We just had one of the girls, Angie, who works here, just came in and said, hey, there's a guy from the electric company. I just caught him walking through the gates where the dogs are. Well, that's a bit of a problem for him. He's on private property. He has now opened a gate, and my guys go out there. When I get there, Lewis is already out there, and I've already got it. Lewis is like, do you want me to hard bounce this guy, or do you want me to see what he's doing? And I go, who are you with? I'm a contractor. Right. Who do you work for? What contractor are you with? And take a picture of them. Take a picture of the vehicle. Take a picture of them. Now they know, okay, if this isn't really what I'm doing, right? And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm checking the ages of all these power poles. And I said, well, this is private property. The power that comes onto my property deadheads here. So if I have a tree that cuts down one of my power lines, it's on private property. It affects no other property. The power comes on here. It does not leave here. And he goes, this pole right here is from 1972. I go, yeah, that's an old pole. I go, but it's been recycled because it was just put in the ground here 5 years ago. So they're using those old poles. And he was going around, and we watched him. Lewis watched him the whole time he was on the property. He was 10 feet away from him the whole time. He's hammering all these electric poles. He's taking photos. He's looking at the dates on them and whatnot. Okay, benign. There's a lot of road improvement stuff going around. A lot of federal grant money has hit the ground, and they're utilizing it, spending it before the end of the year or whatever. Fine. But what else are they looking for? If you see something, say something, right? Are they looking for guys that pulled power from one building to another building? Are they looking for, I mean, I have no codes or zoning. They can't say shit to me out here. But if you go 2 miles in town, what else are they reporting that seems to be of no, it doesn't matter. It's never a problem until it's a problem. And when people come around looking, even though it's on private property, and they come in looking for one thing, what else are they reporting on?
So is he allowed to go on your property without permission or no?
Apparently he thinks that they are. The gates were open. He couldn't have come on the property unless the gates were open. He came during business hours. But right after you had that shooting in North Carolina, you had an SF guy. There were some, turns out they were Chechnyan or whatever, guys taking photos of his children. He comes out, confronts them, and ends up shooting 2 of them, kills one, shoots another. They all speak, Russian and stuff. There's multiple incidences of this happening around military installations. This was an SF guy. This was a colonel, special forces colonel, that killed this dude. About 3 weeks later, we have some dudes here on the property at the same power poles. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm taking pictures for this cable. And at first he ignored me. I go, hey, you and I are going to have a conversation, or there's going to be a lot more people here and a lot more problem. And he said something. I go, are you South African? And he said, yeah. And then we had a little bit of a conversation, but he was taking photos of something on top of the phone pole for the cable company. And now here they are taking another set of people taking pictures of the exact same phone poles of the phone poles, supposedly. Who knows what they're really doing?
And it wouldn't be practical for you to keep your gate closed during work hours, would it?
No, it wouldn't. And you probably have signed something in your contract that they have access during business hours to their infrastructure, right? You probably don't own those poles. The company probably owns the poles.
There it is there. AJ says power company typically has an easement that allows them to access their poles. And of course, I mean, another reason to be off grid, I suppose, but they got you over a barrel because if you want power, you're going to have to basically sign off, whether, you know, implicitly or explicitly, that they can come and access your poles.
Yeah. And it's like Angie says, people want to know why we don't want power. I mean, they're making you take power. And even if you don't want power, they made you perk your property to have septic, and they won't energize you without septic. It's getting to the point where you're not going to have a choice.
We've been going through, so I mean, as much as I can be open about it right now, because I can't share all of it yet, but we've been looking for an acreage. So we've looked at a few different properties, and one that we really like has a very old septic system. And it's one of those things that's grandfathered in until it isn't. It's like, don't rattle too many chains, or all of a sudden you could end up having to put in a new $30,000 or $40,000 septic system. And then that becomes, you know, cost prohibitive, right?
Yeah, we had friends in San Diego before we left San Diego that were very, very rural, and they came through and put in city water and sewage, and they went through and they actually poured concrete in people's wells. They dug up and destroyed the septic system, and they had to pay, and they had to pay to run the sewage and the water to the house, and they destroyed all their stuff out there.
That man, oh man, doesn't that bother me? That reminds me of during COVID when they dumped all the skate parks full of sand. You know, just cut off the nose to spite the face. Oh my god!
And you'd have 8 people on Boston Whalers or Ribs to harass and round up one guy on a surfboard because he might have COVID. But you're going to expose 8 other people to him.
It's the same thing up here. We have, you're not allowed to have tint in your windows. I mean, there's some weird rules about it. So the cops will be known to take a knife and cut through your tint and then tell you to come, you know, they'll give you a fine, and then you have to prove that you removed it as well, but they'll ruin it just so you can't enjoy it.
But all of their cars have tint.
Oh, 100%. Also, I actually enjoyed this, but they can also talk on their phone while they drive.
Yeah. They'll pull you over. We've got a bunch of those in this town right now, people getting pulled over, and they're like, I didn't even have my phone. It wasn't even in the car. And they said that he saw something. We have a lot of that bullshit going on right now, but they're on there, and there's plenty of every time there's one of these posts, people start posting photos of these officers who wrote the tickets on cell phones themselves.
Dude, I tell you, here, you know, they'll pull you over for if your license plate's covered in snow. You'll see cops with license plates covered in snow all the time. I see cops with a headlight out all the time, and the same shit you'll get pulled over for. Now, the other day, I was going on a side road up in the city where our daycare is, and I see one cop kind of rolled through a stop sign, and I have the right of way. I'm just going through, and his buddy was behind, and I knew, I was watching. I'm like, he's going to pull through that stop sign. This is my one chance to honk a horn at a cop, and can't do anything about it. So I watched him, and he pulls halfway through, and I lay on the horn, and I'm like, stop sign, and he stops. And now, if it was anybody else, you know, most people, if they accidentally pull through a stop sign in front of you, they get that kind of sheepish look on their face, like, sorry, you know, or whatever, right? Like, just stupid. And that cop gave me the biggest glare in the world, like it was my fucking fault that he went through a stop sign.
There's tons of videos. There's tons of videos of that exact same thing happening, and the police harassing that person that honked. Hey, you almost hit me, or I almost hit you, and they write them a ticket for using the horn. I don't remember what it's called.
That's why I was happy. I was like, I know I've got my dash cam on. I mean, I probably shouldn't anyway, but I honked. I'm like, I knew he was in there. He would have hit me, and I would have stopped in time. But I was like, this is my one opportunity to give him a honk and let him know, like, you can't just go through a stop sign because you're a cop. Like, you don't have your lights on. You and your buddy are just either going to the station or the donut shop, and you can't roll through even though you don't see me, you know?
Yep.
Did you see that recall on butter at Costco? 80,000. No. Oh my God, this one's good, John. Chris Dixon was on earlier. He's the one that hit me up on it. Okay, here it is. Costco announced a recall of 80,000 pounds of butter. Are you ready? Do you want to know the reason why they recalled the butter, John? This is a good one. Because they didn't list milk as an ingredient on the package. So because butter didn't have a milk allergen warning on there, the FDA said you have to destroy 80,000 pounds of butter even though literally the process for making butter comes from milk. But since they didn't label it with milk as an allergen, 80,000 pounds of butter goes to waste.
Wild.
That blows me out of the water, man. That is just simple.
What about all the what is it, listeria or something? They keep recalling meat after meat after meat.
Yes.
A bunch of fast food places couldn't serve meat because of listeria. You had all this Black Forest ham called back because what is listeria? Where's that come from? I'm not sure.
I'm not 100. It's a man. I'm not actually sure. It's somebody said E. coli. There's E. coli as well, which I know isn't that like a fecal bacteria thing that gets into the food, and because we had a kid die, I believe, in Canada because of the lettuce on the burgers, and
that's usually salmonella, the lettuce that comes from bird poop.
Right. I mean, it's almost an epidemic right now of food recalls and issues in the food chain. Like, it's a little scary, man.
Yeah, I mean, you should automatically assume that anything in the grocery store is not fully what it's said to be.
Here we go. Ian. Hey, Ian, good to see you. You might have met Ian. Ian's good shit from down in Florida. He's coming up for the Christmas party too. Says it's a genus of bacteria that acts as an intercellular parasite in mammals.
Got it.
So that sounds nasty. And romaine lettuce was recalled for listeria, and listeria comes from soil and poop. None of which. Yeah, there you go. So
stay
if anybody's got,
stay poop free. Stay poop free.
Yes. If anybody's got any questions for John or I, throw them out there real quick, because I'll try to keep it under 90 minutes for you, John, because I know it's one of those days, and I gotta get working on my video today. Monday's always my office day, which is a good day. You know how it is. So how's the business been going lately?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a bit of a fire there the other day.
Oh, we lit something on fire.
Yeah, I know.
Not an accidental fire.
I leaned you in there pretty good. Sorry.
Yeah. I think we're off of, so a guy he only orders during discount codes, and he's ordered over 120 orders, and he's been a customer for 10 years. And out of the blue, we get, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, maybe 12 chargebacks, basically disputes through PayPal, and they were all this guy, and they all came through all right at once. Bing, 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 bing. So we look at it, check it out, and most of his stuff we had sitting in boxes waiting on discount code stuff. So we maneuvered what we could to get it out, and I think we canceled 2 of his orders. And PayPal, we almost always win a PayPal dispute, almost always. Mm-hmm. And as of this year, when I looked, I think we were $900,000 has run through that PayPal account this year since January, and we have lost, I think it was under 300. It was $200 and change that actually went back to the customer. So the support on the business side is pretty good with PayPal, and we got these things, shipped them out to him. We win the disputes, and he receives them, and then he goes back to PayPal and says that we sent him empty boxes. And our reply is, 900,000 orders with PayPal, and all of a sudden we sent empty boxes all to one customer. And, I think we won those those secondary disputes also. But I'd made a video, and I changed his name a little bit. I didn't tag him in it or anything. Like, we used to tag a dude all the time. And he outed himself on the YouTube video, the first video from a week before last. And he came on there and he's like, "You fabricated this. This is not what happened. That's not even the product that I ordered." And I said, "Well, I happen to have the invoices. So here it is. Here's the product that he ordered that was in the first video." And he said, "And I ordered these other things." So we went ahead and took those other things also, because it just makes so much traction.
Sure.
And I don't know how many orders we have right now, but off of this weekend, there's over 200 orders. Just Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, there's over 200 orders. And I think we're over $75,000 when I looked this morning off of those 2 discount codes, $75,000 in sales from people that used that dude's name as the code. We only used his first name.
So why did he all of a sudden, because
I don't know.
Yeah. Like what? Because I mean, everybody knows how your process works. I mean, if you want your gear, you're going to wait for it sometimes because it's just part of the process, right?
Well, and so after I guess the piece I left out after this is after the charge off and we won the charge offs, he used that code that weekend and placed 4 more orders. And Amanda canceled his orders and said, "You're not welcome as a customer here." Now he'll go make a fake account or whatever that won't have his same name. It'll have a different email address on it. And as long as we don't know, we don't know.
Right.
But he still tried to buy, because what he's doing is he buys this stuff and then gets these specialty items that have a piece of embroidery or something, and he sells them for a lot of money on eBay. There's a few guys that do that. People just don't want to wait for the products, or they just don't like me, but they want the product. And they feel like if they buy it secondary market, that's like not giving me the money. So there is a secondary market, and they sell these things for, that product that he buys for $50, he'll double his money. He'll sell it for twice retail, buy it now, and people eat it up. They do buy it right up. So he was making money off of that stuff for sure.
How much shit, like, I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, but how much shit would you have to buy from you to resell at $50 a pop to make it worth your while, though?
That's it, man. Like, when I look at things where you can double your money on this. Yeah, but I'm doubling my money and only making $100. Like, I was having a conversation with a kid in here today. He had said, I said, "How was deer hunting?" And he goes, "I didn't see any deer. I'm going to go out there all next weekend and get a deer." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Well, it's because," I go, "you could just buy ribeyes at the store. Like, you're going to go spend all your entire weekend." I go, "What that says is you don't make enough money." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "You can go out here and shoot this lamb out here and butcher it down and fill your freezer up with this lamb." And he goes, "Can I?" I go, "Yeah, but how long is that really going to take you? That's, 6 hours of your life to do that. Why don't you just go to the grocery store and buy the pack of the meat that you want, go to Costco or a butcher or whatever?" I go, "You don't make enough money." I go, "I know you don't understand what that means right now, but it costs me too much money to go out there and butcher that lamb. We have all these animals. So if society collapses and that revenue can't come in the door, we have this, and we can, when the power goes out, we don't have to flip a switch. All the infrastructure is here. Right now, it's a hobby farm / zoo. But if the time comes, we know how to breed these animals. We know how to reproduce them. The animals make the soil. The animals make the grass, and everything is here if we need it." I go, "You need to spend your weekends making hundreds and hundreds of dollars, whatever that is. You have to find that thing." Mm-hmm. And these are employees that I say this to. I guess I'm lucky that none of my employees will ever go do that.
So I don't know if I haven't actually told you this, but after last month's show, after talking about it, and I've mulled it over for a while, I actually shut down the Patch of the Month Club, and it was coming for a while. And I have always said to folks, when you're building business, do more of what makes you money and stop doing the things that isn't making you the money. Now, here's the caveat to that, folks. As you go along, there's going to be things that still make you money, but don't make you enough money anymore. So they have to go too. And so that's what ended up happening with this, because it was basically taking up 2 days a month. And if I ran the numbers, it wasn't making a whole hell of a lot of money. It was fun, and I really enjoyed it for the time being that it went. But you know what I have spent this last entire month doing? Me and my son-in-law, 3 to 4 days a week, renovations at the daycare. Now, I don't get any money for that at the end of the day. I don't get to go home and my wife's like, "Good boy, here's your paycheck." But what that is going to do in a very short period of time is allow us to add 100 to 120 kids to the daycare.
Yep.
Now, each kid is, in the ballpark of $1,000 a month, roughly, give or take. Now, I mean, you got expenses and everything like that. So I'm going to spend 3 to 4 months working my ass off on these renovations for the long-term return. And that's where some folks kind of skip over it. They don't realize sometimes you got to give up some things that aren't making you a lot of money so that you can make the big money.
Yeah, the reason patches work for us is because I pay $1 for a patch. Well, $2 a patch, right? And I sell a patch for $10. But I have all those patches. I've got 100 of them at any given time, different versions, populated on the website. We don't have to do anything other than pick and pull. And they're not just ordering patches. If a guy orders a box full of patches, that's hundreds of dollars. We just pick and pull it, put it in the thing. He's used the code. He gets the promo item. We ship it out. But it's usually an add-on, right? If we have a $65 threshold on an order to qualify for the free trinket, and he buys a $50 patch, a $50 pouch, or a $50 real item, he's going to use those patches or stickers to bring his threshold up. And, we make a lot of money on those things. Same thing with, anything we don't have to make that's branded merchandise, coffee mugs, beanies, t-shirts. Like we more than double our money in most cases. Like I 10x my money on most of that stuff. Like anything that comes into the business, we have to double it. Like I don't bring any products in that I make a 30% margin on. We don't have to do it. There's plenty of other companies selling things that make 30% margins. If we're selling something, I double my money or better on it.
And that's what I love. And I think for me, I had to realize that like you're a product-based business that you're going to make really good margins on. And those upsells of $10 or $20 here and there make a huge difference. Whereas I'm not a product business. I'm a service business. I make videos and we offer a service for, now it doesn't mean that I couldn't still make money off it, but it didn't take off to where I wanted it to. So for me, that extra time's also gone into the YouTube channel. And, between last month and this month, I'm halfway between 20 and 25,000. And the patches were 2% of all of that money.
And a guy will hear you, like there's some guy right now that has a patch company and he's like, well, I make patches and whatever. It's not that you don't make enough. It's that you make so much more on something else, right? We can look at it from either side. I got a buddy who runs a company doing patches and it's paid off his house. It bought him a rigid inflatable boat. He's got multiple vehicles. He's got a bunch of Rolexes just off of the patch company. But it's very different than you and I doing patches. Very, very different, right? So once you have a brand, people will buy things that, have your logo on them. Look how many people just buy Nike bullshit. And Nike's a shit company. Like they don't make a product that's any good. People just buy the swoosh because of the money that they have put into influencers and such.
There's I think Coach, is the brand. Becky really likes their purses. They're no better purses than anybody else's, but guess what? She goes and spends money on those purses because it has the brand on them and that's what she likes. She, it's the same with me and my, my SOE wallet, my shoulder carry bags, my t-shirts. Like that's why I have that gear because number one, I want to support you, but number two, I love it, and people want to be a part of something that they love.
We're not really a luxury brand though. Like we do a t-shirt. We do 120 pieces every Monday. We very rarely rerun those ever again. But when you look like Louis Vuitton, right? When you look at those brown Louis Vuitton with the yellow or gold LVs all over them, those aren't leather. Those are linoleum. No. That's wax canvas. Those cost them $14 a piece to have made. They sell them to your wife for $1,200 for the big carryall. We buy them. I buy them for $1,200. I cut them apart and I turn them into $10,000. And if we go to Louis Vuitton and buy that bag and walk out in the parking lot and cut it in half with scissors, it will generate so much traffic, hate. Oh my God, you could have fed some homeless people with that, but it spurs the algorithm. And then when we build a product and auction that product off, I'll sell one wallet or one little bag out of that $1,200 thing. And I'll sell that'll go on auction for $1,200 within a couple of hours. And I've still got 80% of the material left over.
Isn't it like right here? Jason says, I love it when you cut it up. Of course you do. It's like when Becky, I was in bed the other morning and Becky says, you got to see this, honey. And she shows me the video of you lighting your merch on fire. I love that shit because I've learned so much from you. And I know the reason you do that more than anything is because it builds your business through.
It's a feeding frenzy. Like we used to do that when Facebook, now they have cyberbullying and stuff, right? So we can't tag a dude. We used to tag a guy. Somebody actually tagged the guy on my Instagram post and I deleted it because if you tag him, now he can say, look, these guys are cyberbullying me. So it's not as fun as it used to be, but people all know because people in life have to deal with that, right? Human resources or management, right? If you go to a big chain store restaurant, where there's a bunch of kids running around, there's always that dude in there. He's super loud. He's ate half his steak. He demands to see the manager. He complains to the waitress. Everything's wrong. Meanwhile, his kids are running around just destroying the restaurant typically. And they're, what are they going to do? They've been told, look, the customer's always right. Diffuse the situation, lower the audible tone so it takes eyeballs off. And now we're going to reward him. We're going to diffuse it. Would you like some free dessert? Here's a gift certificate for 20% off your next visit. Please come back and do this to all my people again. And he gets that reward for that, while the management or the waitress isn't allowed to go, well, hey, you piece of shit, you ate half of this. It clearly wasn't bad enough that you sent it back to begin with. You're looking, and they get rewarded for that. And I don't have to do that. And when people see us do that, they're like, man, I wish I could do that at my job.
That right there is the freedom of running your own business. And it always seems to come back to that, John, is that so many, 95% of people will say, oh man, I wish I could run my own schedule. Or man, I wish I could tell that customer to go pound sand and go burn his material. But you absolutely could. If you start a bone broth business, you can totally tell people to go sit on an egg and leave them alone. AJ, I see you there, brother. Or Homestead Medical, any of those guys, right?
And like we could give a class on how to do this. It didn't exist. It started with a guy called my wife because you had to have a phone number linked to PayPal. So this dude ordered, I think it was like on a Thursday night, Friday night, something. He orders something and literally calls my wife, gets the number off of PayPal, and he's like, you bitch, where's my order? How come I don't have tracking? And when we looked at it, the order wasn't even 24 hours old. So I wrote everything down. She's like, what are you going to do? I go, I don't know. So I just kept listening to it, wrote it all down, typed it all out on Facebook. We found him on Facebook. I tagged him and I go, hey, what do you guys think? What would you do if a customer called your wife, called her a bunch of bad names, was super irate that his order hadn't shipped? The order's not even 24 hours old. What would you do? And she goes, what's going to happen? I go, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it was like 10 o'clock at night when I posted this, tagged him in it on the Facebook group, the Facebook page. I think I had like 300,000 people at that time on there. And when I had forgotten about it, woke up the next morning and she says, hey, what happened with that post at like 10, 11 o'clock? I look at it and there's thousands of comments on this thing. It had just gone viral. It had never happened to any of my posts before. And we had gained like 50,000 followers off of that. And people are like, I don't know who this guy is, but I like what he's saying. I wish I could do that at work. And then there was the other side, right? Customer's always right. You can't do this. But those people saying that, those weren't customers. They were never a viable customer to my product. And we gained a ton of customers from that. And we would, once a week, it used to be also back then, a lot of our stuff, we didn't have an interactive website. You would buy things. You would tell me you wanted it. We would build it. And then we would send you PayPal info for it. So every Friday we would do a kill order video where guys didn't pay. I'm like, hey man, Bob Joe's, he didn't pay. Here's what he ordered. What do you guys think about? And we would sell all that stuff. People would pay double the price of it just as to tell that guy off. And we couldn't even keep up. It was more, and the sales would just run and run and run. It was the best advertising we had ever done. It even surpassed any paid advertising we had ever done.
I love it. I don't know. I'm sure there's other examples of bigger companies doing that, but do you know any other examples in the wild of companies that do that on a regular basis?
You see it occasionally. There's another side to it also. In Business 101, I remember the professor saying on average, a happy customer will tell 3 people, but a dissatisfied customer will tell 11 people. And the example I use is when you're driving past the car lot, you never see a dude out there with a sign that's like, man, I really love this car dealership. They really make me happy and they did everything I want. But you do see a guy with his kids out there and a big banner's like, these guys really screwed me over. Don't buy any cars from these people. And there has to be right in all of it, right? From both. You have to, if you're doing this blast, number one, you've got to be right. And you have to have a solid product. So what we find is with these guys, we're not the first company that they did this to. They're the same guys that are berating the girl at the customer service desk at Best Buy or at Home Depot or at, Walmart because their Chinese crap broke, like she has anything to do with it. But they're so used to doing this and getting rewarded for it. They go out on the forums. If you're buying my gear, most likely you're also on some internet group on social media or one of the original, forum groups. And these guys go out there and they're like, man, these SOE guys, I can't believe this. I ordered this thing. They didn't ship it. And then they made fun of me on the internet. Well, everybody reading that, for every one guy commenting in those threads, there's 1,000 eyeballs on that thread. And they know that guy. They recognize his name because he's done it to multiple companies. I got this thing. It wasn't what I thought. Usually he's the problem in all of this. And those guys watching that, they know that. We'll get up in the morning and print orders out, and we'll have sold 20 shotgun rigs. And Amanda will go, somebody's talking trash about the shotgun rigs. I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, I have 20 orders back to back. And I'll email them. I'll go, hey, where did you hear about us? Thank you for your order. I see this is your first order. How did you hear about us? Well, some dude was talking trash about you, and they send me a link. And while he thinks he's damaging the company, we make a lot of money behind it. And that's actually, Josh just posted that link right there. The New York Times did an article on me, little old John Willis. And he talks about me doing this and how it actually benefits my company.
I've never seen that article, John. I'm going to copy and paste this, guys. That is friggin' incredible. Because
it's worth a read. It works. It works. It continues to work, but you can't be a fledgling company. Like you have to have a solid product, and you have to be right.
Right. And that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. It's a little similar in, well, okay. If you're ever scrolling through Reels or something and you'll see one of those videos where like somebody's like, how you can apply drywall mud to a door or to a wall, use a playing card, like one of the dumbest things you'll ever see. And people, those kind of videos get more traction because people are like, are you an absolute idiot? Why are you doing that? And of course the person knew that when they made the video. It's the same as if I leave something not wrong, but something controversial in a video. Yeah, you get way more comments on that. Like, no, there's no way I'll use 9-volt or whatever it happens to be.
And if you're scrolling Reels or Shorts and it shows up, it's because it's going viral. You get way more from somebody seeing that and sending it to somebody like, hey, does this work? Or, hey, try this. Or I send it to friends and I make fun of that person. I'm like, look at this goofball, right?
Yep.
As long as that share is worth way more than a view or a comment.
Do you know how many Reels you send me, John, that I go back to watch again, maybe a week later, and they've been deleted, and not because the person deleted them, but because it's controversial. Yep. I love it. I bet you half of them, and it makes my day,
Yep.
Well, John, we better wrap her up. We've been 90 minutes.
Awesome.
What do you got coming up here? Well, I guess it's the Christmas party, hey?
SOEparty.com. You can register right there. You don't really register. You just tell us you're coming. There's no fee for it. If you're a vendor, if you have a product, a service, a good, and you want to come set up, we just need to hear from you what your product is and how much room you need. We're having a hobby horse race. As crazy as that sounds, there's some really big prizes. They're giving away a brand new AR-15 to the high winner. Look up Hobby Horse on Instagram. It's these little girls jumping over hurdles with stick horses. We're going to do that here. It's going to be absolutely crazy. People are wearing costumes and they've got their whole choreographed thing going on. So make sure you come out. We got a lot of music, a lot of food. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be the party to live in infamy. It happens to be on D-Day.
I can't wait. I'm excited. This will be my first party to get down to. I'm going to be there, which is going to, not that that's a big deal, but I can't wait to see you. I'll go to Tennessee any chance I get. And for anybody out there listening on John's side, if you want to follow me, Toolman Tim's Workshop on YouTube. I put out a video every week on generators, backup power. Just did one on how to survive a deep cold blackout. And this live stream is actually going to be moving to its own channel come January, and it's going to be Workshop Radio. It's already there. We're streaming there as well. But if you want to come by and check out This Week in Prepping, as you can see right here, I do that every Thursday, which is a hell of a good time. So, John, man, I can't wait to see you, and we'll hopefully maybe make some time to sit down and do a recording when we get together. How's that sound?
Well, we're doing a live podcast recording Q&A for the VIP, so we'll make sure we get you in there with that.
I would love it.
Yep.
All right, folks. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.